Hello and welcome to the Journey of Grief, Becoming Us Without Them. Today we have a panel of women who are going to talk about losing their partner. And I'm very honored that you're all here, and thank you so much for being willing to share with us. And let's start out first. Christina, would you like to introduce us to yourself and the person that you lost?
Sure. My name is Christina, and I lost my husband, Dan. He was 52. He got pancreatic cancer, and he passed away within a year of the diagnosis.
Okay. Kim.
Hey, thanks for having us, Barbara. And my name is Kim. I have quite a few losses that I've had over the last 15 years or less. And one was my first husband, Fred, and then my dad, as well as some in-laws. And so that's kind of what I'm here to talk about.
So tell us about Fred.
He was my first husband. We were not married at the time, but we were married for 24 years, and I'd known him since I was 12 years old. And he's the father of my 4 children. He's an amazing composer, and just a really sweet person. We were best friends, and in retrospect, really, I mean, I think I always knew we were soulmates, but you know, knowing somebody that long like I did, he really was just like and having grown up around him, just kind of the fabric of who I am is really wrapped up all in him. And so it's, do you want me to continue?
Um, we can come back to a little bit more in a
Okay.
minute. Let's hear from Angelina.
Yes, thank you, Barbara. I think I want to first off say that I am so sorry that we're all here, but within that same breath, I'm so grateful that a space like this is created for us to come and connect and find healing and all the people that are going to see this. But I'm Angelina, and a little over 2 years ago, I lost my fiance, Emilio, to suicide. We were together for 3 years. Something we used to say all the time is, when we were together for a year, we'd say like, does it feel like we've only been together for a year? And we were like, no, it feels like we've been together forever. And 2 years, like, does it feel like we've only been together 2 years? Like, no, it feels like we've been like married for like ages and ages. Um, but yeah, I had the first time I'd ever seen him or saw him, I was a lot younger. Had a crush on him immediately, and when we started dating, I was, I think, 25. Um, my friends were teasing him, and they were like, "Well, why didn't you have a crush on her when she had a crush on you?" And we were 7 years apart, so I was 10 and he was 17. So that would have been weird if he had a crush on me when I had a crush on him. But yeah, so we were together for about 3 years, and I think one of the things that I would want to highlight, is he was obviously loved by many, but I think there was a side of him that I got to see that not a lot of people got to see in him. He was to the world very macho, very tough, but I constantly got to see a very soft side of him. And so when I had bought my house, that he loved to grocery shop with me, he loved to go shopping with me. And so when I bought my house and I went to go and like decorate my house, he wanted to come with me, and I was like, oh, okay, cool. But then he started like putting things in the basket and like picking decorations, and I'm like, oh, okay, like that's cool, but I did not like the decorations he was putting in the basket. So that's just a really sweet memory that popped up when I was just thinking about the meeting we were gonna have today.
Cool. Well, thank you very much. So I've asked each one of you to sort of talk about, make some suggestions about what we should all talk about. And so Christina wants us to talk about first the brain fog, and then sort of the time release nature of the grieving process. You might come out of the fog, but coming out of the agony takes way longer and then swoops in on you suddenly. So that's a really great thing for us to talk about, is that early brain fog, and then that time release of the grief over a long period of time.
Yeah, it's no matter how your loss happens, there's trauma involved with it, of course. For me, the process of first the diagnosis of pancreatic cancer, and then the surgeries and the chemotherapy and the long protracted process, even though it was a year, but it was a lot. It was a lot for both of us to go through, and just especially when we knew that it was at the end. And I just noticed that I think my brain let me experience what I could experience at the time of, as far as the grief processing, even during and after. And then I definitely noticed after my husband had passed, and maybe a few months later, that I was doing these crazy things like leaving the stove on or forgetting to lock the front door or things like that. And it was not like me. And it was like, what's happening? What's wrong with me? And I did a little Google search, and I found this. Someone had called it widow brain, kind of like pregnancy brain, but for widows, where, well, but I think it's a little different. I think it's related to the trauma of what you experienced and just the overwhelm. And then I just noticed that the time release part is that over time I could process a little bit more and a little bit more. It doesn't happen all at once. It happens over time. And thankfully the widow brain seems to have gone away, but it was actually scary for me. And I even had to tell people at work, like, I'm not 100% right now. I just need you to know that.
Yeah, so Kim, brain fog.
Did you just, are you speaking to me, Barbara? Sorry, I didn't hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah, brain fog is a real deal. I've had it for a really long time. In fact, part of my little picture that I wrote of like a lot of the different traumas that have gone on through the years, I wrote right here, brain fog. Because it's my kids actually were worried that I was getting Alzheimer's. And I've lost my car in parking lots. I put the air tags on my keys and my wallet, even in my wallet, to make sure, just like little, I use alarms all the time on my phone. Brain fog it's huge, and it's also very debilitating in a way. It makes you feel really bad about yourself. But my kids were like, Mom, you need to get yourself checked. And then they're worried because they've already lost their dad. Now they're worried that they're going to lose me, and I'm going to forget them because I'm forgetting everything. Interestingly, I just had my brain scanned 2 weeks ago, and there were no signs in it of Alzheimer's. And I can't tell you, like, it's been I think 11 years since Fred passed away, and it makes me emotional to talk about right now. But I've been worried this whole time that I was going to lose my memory.
Wow, that's hard.
And it was just such a sigh of relief, to see that there wasn't any signs of it. So,
Yeah.
And I don't think that's well known that this happens. I wish it was more out there so people could know to expect it.
yeah.
Absolutely. So Angelina, talk to us about brain fog.
Yeah, brain fog is very real. And I think for me, I think for a long time, and I don't know if I maybe called it disassociating, um, but I think for the first 6 months for sure, I would call it brain fog and disassociate. There were so many things that people told me, and it's like, I'm like, did people tell me that? Or people like, remember when I told you this? And I'm like, I have no idea. I would say the first 6 months to the first year, I could not remember anything. Um, you know, a good friend of mine, or somebody I'd worked with, but like I consider her a good friend. Her daughter had gotten diagnosed with cancer and had passed away pretty quickly. And for the life of me, I could not remember when the daughter got diagnosed. I could not remember when the daughter passed away. And I felt so bad. And usually I have a really good memory, but I really contribute all of that to I wasn't in my right mind. I contributed it to brain fog. And, you know, kind of like what you were saying, Christina, it's not something that's talked about as much, but I think it's, even if it was talked about a lot, I don't think, had I ever, let's say I never lost my fiance, I don't think I would have cared to have learned about it, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
Now, because I can, you know, it applies to me now, I'm interested in learning about it.
Yeah, I like to think of it, it's like if you, every day you have a junk drawer. In my family, we had this junk drawer. It's full of all these cool pieces and bits, most of which were garbage. And so my brother was Asperger's. And so every day he would go and he would just dig in the junk drawer. It was just heaven for him. He'd pick up the things and be amazed by them every single day. And so just imagine if you have a junk drawer like that with years of accumulated cool little pieces of things. And one day you open the junk drawer and there's a giant hole. Someone has just reached in and pulled out a big chunk of your stuff and carried it off. And you're like, and then your brain, it's like got to think about 1,000 things. What was in there? What if I need that? What if I can't replace it? What if I, but what if, and your brain is just so overwhelmed and devastated by the fact that there's a hole there, and you can only stand there and stare at the drawer so long. You still have to close the drawer and go get dressed, but you're still thinking about the hole in the junk drawer. And then you're trying to go to work, but you're so worried about what's in the, not in the junk drawer anymore. And it's just with you everywhere. You're at parties and you're talking to people, but half of your brain is just worrying about the hole in the junk drawer. And gradually, every day when you open it, that hole starts to cave in, and it starts to cave in, and it starts to cave in. And if there was anything there that you actually needed, you know, maybe that two things that were actually valuable, you replace them and move on. And after a while, there is no hole in the junk drawer. And you only occasionally, when you open it, do you remember the devastation of finding that giant hole in the middle of it. And yet, life has gone on, and you're not thinking about it all the time. And you can think about work and think about getting dressed and think about hanging out with friends. And the junk drawer almost never comes into your mind.
If I could also add too, I think what's really prevalent for me right now is um, fog brain tends to come up every anniversary season,
Mm.
every single anniversary season.
Yeah, so let's talk about anniversary season. That's a great topic, Angelina.
Yeah, I think that for me, anniversary season, um, I've had two. Um, you know, the first anniversary season, when the month came, I was overwhelmingly sad. Um, and I think in all honesty, the greatest emotion I had was I was scared. Um, couldn't really explain why, but I was really scared. It felt like I was living in fear. Not that I had to relive the death again or anything, but that's the emotion that I had. Um, interestingly enough, once the anniversary had passed, I feel guilty saying this, but I really had gone through a lot. I mean, to navigate losing the love of your life and then navigate it being suicide and just the level of guilt that comes with that. I had been through a lot in that first year, but after the first anniversary, I felt like I could take on the world. I felt like I had lived in a year of depression. It didn't mean that I was happy. I wasn't excited about life. I, wasn't dating. I wasn't, it wasn't those emotions. I think it was I got through the hardest year of my life. Like, bring it on. Like, there's nothing I can't get through. I was ready to like take on like things at work, and I just felt motivated, I guess, to keep going. And something, I think the best way to describe it is I felt like I started to see a light at the end of the tunnel that I didn't see for a long time. Um, Fast forward to this last anniversary. The month came. In the first couple of days, I was aware that the anniversary was coming, but the emotions of sadness didn't hit like they did last year. So I was like, oh, okay, kind of just going with the flow. And then I think the second week into the month, I immediately started to spiral really hard. I think I spiraled um more than I did last year, and it took me by surprise. Um, and I think that it taking me by surprise and it being more difficult than last year, I really don't know how to explain it. It just made it very difficult, and that's where people started to tell me like, Angelina, grief isn't linear, and it's one of those things where it's like, I've heard that all before, and I don't know why I think that didn't apply to me, and but I just want to feel better. And I kind of had this vision in my head, well, once the anniversary date comes, I'm going to feel motivated again and I'm going to take on the world again. And it didn't happen that way. After the anniversary came, I still, even to this day, I still kind of feel in a slump. I've so yeah, anniversary season, it's I don't want to say it scares me a little bit, but I'm very much aware that, or I am experiencing that it is not linear. And I had it in my mind what I thought it was going to look like. And that's very much not the case. Very much not the case. And nonetheless, fog brain. I was very blessed last year. The agency I was working for, my boss at the time is like a second mom to me, and I adjust that she's very well aware of my loss, and I had told her, hey, like I told her I have fog brain. Can you give me a list of items of what to do every day? Give me a checklist. And so she told me every day what I needed to do, checked in with me every day, and I was really grateful for that. Um, and then this year again, it was interesting, to see how I kind of fell into that fog brain. But yeah, so I think we hear it all the time, grief isn't linear. And it was a very real experience. For It's one thing to hear it and it's one thing to experience it.
Yeah, for sure.
Angelina, I really resonate with what you're saying about the unpredictability of how you're going to respond, because there's times when I think, oh, this date's coming up, it's going to be a really hard day for me, and maybe it is and maybe it isn't. I don't know until I get there, and then I could just be driving down from work and something could just hit me out of the blue, so that you just really can't predict what is going to put you in that grieving space, or what is going to affect you hard. It's which I wish it was predictable, because it'd be helpful, but it just hits you out of the blue.
Yeah, I was just going to say it would be really helpful if it was predictable.
Yeah. I was going to add, as far as like the anniversary, what's interesting is, my kids, they lost their dad. So his death, he was sick like 6 weeks before. He had cancer, and we didn't know what it was at all. He thought he had a sinus infection, a cold, like we didn't know. And then I took him to the ER and found out, we found out it was cancer, and then he got transferred to a hospital. They did a procedure the next day, which then led to him being intubated immediately. They tried to do some radiation and it swelled his windpipe. So he was intubated immediately, and we didn't really get to talk to him after that. I mean, we could speak to him, but at some point, he was kind of put in like a sedated state. And so we didn't get to process or say goodbye or anything. So that what's interesting with my kids, they were ages 8 to 18 at the time. But now like my girls, I have 2 boys, 2 girls. My girls will start, like, they'll get really sad as the anniversaries. And mostly it's like when he started to get sick, our bodies will start feeling it. And then I'll notice like my girls will be sad, and then all of a sudden I'll be sad. And then it'll dawn on us that, like, oh, this is the time when, dad started getting sick. And then by the time the anniversary comes, which was December 11th, um, then it kind of we've acknowledged it. And so that kind of, it starts to fade a little bit. And then we try to find a way to celebrate, the anniversary. Like Kate will, the youngest, she'll bake a cake for him, or something like for his birthday as well. But we'll try to do something. We used to let go of balloons, which was really neat. We did that the first little bit, or just try to be together during some of those anniversaries, like either his birthday. My girls got together this year. My youngest daughter went to go visit my oldest daughter in Tennessee during Father's Day. And so that was kind of the way that they celebrated that anniversary. But we can all feel that. And I just start all of a sudden, I don't know, it's just in your body. your body definitely knows before your brain knows.
That's so true. I noticed that the first year, I think I was just completely numb. So the first anniversary season was just part of the numbness. But then during the second year, I was more awake and aware. And so those anniversaries, everything seemed to hurt more the second year. It was kind of weird, I guess, because I was out of the fog. So that's like Kim said, every year as we're approaching what we call anniversary season, because it's like um, his birthday and the anniversary of our first date and Thanksgiving and Christmas and then our wedding anniversary and then the heart attack day and then the day he died and then Valentine's Day, all in 6 weeks. So by the time we get to, the day he died, I'm in a coma. But there, for some years, I'm fine, this is fine. And I wouldn't notice how dissociated I was. And when I'm dissociated, there's no grown-ups in charge of my brain. So I would just kind of do these weird things. And someone would say to me, oh, it's anniversary season. Oh, of course. And then I could drop back in my body and my brain would turn back on. But it was like I was leaving until I did a meltdown. And someone said, what was that? Oh, do you know that it's anniversary season? Oh, that kind of snuck up on me. So yeah, that's a biggie.
A great piece of advice that somebody had gave me really early on, which kind of resonates what you were saying, Barbara, is when you had just mentioned, that some days you're kind of just skating on in life, is that in your grief, there's going to be days where you might have a good day, or like I mentioned, you might have a day where you can feel like you can take on the world, is really sit in those days and resonate in those days, because you're not always going to have those days. There's going to be a lot of really bad days. And I remember when I would have a good day, some days I would feel guilty for having those days. But I think it's important because those days aren't always going to come. Um, but tying back to one of the other things you were saying, Barbara, that, it's kind of in between the timeline and the anniversary season that I think is so unique to losing a spouse and a partner, is, when it comes to grief, there is 100% chance that everyone on this earth will grieve someone at some point in time, because there's 100% chance we're all going to pass away. There's 100% chance, we're all going to die. But, you know, not guaranteed, but there's a chance that our parents are going to die before we do, or, things like that. But I always think it's like an unwritten rule that, we're going to have our spouse or our partner to get us through, like when our parents die, or things like that. And it's not to say that, when we lose a friend or when we lose a child, or we lose, not to minimize, those deaths, because those deaths they're all painful and they're all awful. But I think that there's really something unique about losing a partner and a spouse. And so, I remember my first year, they say it's the year of first, right? The first holidays without them, the first everything without them. And, you know, I don't know for you ladies, but on Christmas, everybody checked in with me. Valentine's Day, people checked in because it's the day of love, and our spouses aren't here anymore. But interestingly enough, Christmas was hard, but Thanksgiving, I really couldn't fathom attending Thanksgiving with my family, because our family does a toast where we go around the table and say what we're thankful for. And I love my family. I love that life is great for them. And I wouldn't want it any other way, but I couldn't fathom sitting and listening to all of them say what they were thankful for, and how my cousins just got married, and my other cousins just found out they're pregnant, and having to hear that. And I just lost my fiance a couple months ago. I couldn't do it. Um, you know, uh, but then not only that, interestingly enough, the most difficult holiday out of the year was New Year's Eve. I think I lost my marbles on New Year's Eve, and not a single person texted me on New Year's Eve. Not that they had to, but again, nobody got it. Nobody understood. And it's like, well, why would New Year's be so hard? Valentine's Day should be hard. Christmas should be hard. Thanksgiving should be hard. New Year's was hard because I didn't want to say goodbye to the last year I would have my fiance, and I didn't want to start a new year without him. I couldn't fathom it. Um, but I, by the grace of God, found a support group specifically for people who have lost their spouse or partner to suicide. And everybody on the meeting talked about what a difficult time they had on New Year's. And I just was like, thank God, people who get it, people who get it. And
Yeah.
I think it's so important to be connected to people who again, who have, a similar loss. But I think what's also important too is kind of what you said, Barbara, your wedding anniversary, right? People are probably going to message you maybe, on Valentine's Day or maybe when they passed away, but nobody messaged me on, the day that we met. Nobody messaged me on the day he asked me to be his girlfriend. Nobody messaged me on the day that he asked me to be his wife. Barbara, I don't know if people remembered the day that, you guys got married. Kim, I don't know, if it was hard, your kiddos' birthdays, the day, what it was like to bring in, your beautiful children into the world. That I think there's something so special about being connected to people who have specifically lost a spouse. I've had a lot of people who are like, tried to connect with me. I'm like, well, I lost my friend and I lost my mom. And it's like, I appreciate the connection, but I don't think, that people get it. And Barbara,
Yeah.
you had told me something that really stuck with me. Uh, that the second year was the hardest year. And I remember thinking, or it was a harder year. And I was like, I don't think so. I think it's going to be easier. And they say that the second year is the forgotten year. And I felt so forgotten. And it's not that I needed people to text me all the time, because I don't really like attention. But I don't need the constant text. I don't need the text on the holidays, things like that. Cause I think I've figured that out. But on one of the holidays, I was making a joke with, one of my family members, because I babysat her kids all the time growing up. And, I told her, I had said, hey, when I have kids, I'm gonna need you to babysit my kids. And one of my family members had said, like, well, do you even want kids? And I was kind of like in my head, well, I don't even have a boyfriend and I haven't dated, since the passing of my fiance. Like, how do I respond to that? And I'm like, had this been a year prior, the last holiday, he had just completed suicide, you probably wouldn't have asked that, and I've also overheard, family members talking and in good conscience, but just, I don't know if Angelina's ever going to have kids, or, just the things that kind of come up with almost that forgotten piece, almost forgotten kind of, what I've gone through. And so I think too, I think what's really important for grieving people to know in kind of all walks of life is, kind of what you have shared with me, Barbara, is like the first year is the year of first, and the second year is the forgotten year, and kind of really all that comes with that. All that comes with that.
Yeah, so that's a good transition for us to talk about um, the hurtful things that people say. They don't, if you've never experienced it, you say something, you may even think really hard, okay, what will be helpful and not hurtful? But people say stuff, I think they get anxious around us and they can't just say, hey, is it okay if I just sit next to you while you feel sad? I saw this little Winnie the Pooh thing, and Winnie the Pooh or Christopher is sitting next to Eeyore, and Eeyore's in his usual depressed self, and he says, "I'm sorry, I can't be a very good friend today. I'm just feeling so sad." And Christopher says, "I did not come to try to make you feel happy. I came to help you feel sad." And what we need is people that are down for helping us just feel whatever the heck we feel and not trying to do something to make it stop. And that so their well-intentioned things can be really mean. So what are some of the things
Yeah.
that said to you that ended up being painful instead?
I'll start. Man, I'm so glad you're covering this topic, Barbara, because it's a doozy. Um, the so interestingly, the fact that, my husband that Fred and I had divorced, um, it was really weird for a lot of people. And I think I went to this grief conference, which was really great because they basically talked about it doesn't matter if you were divorced, if you were a fiance, if you were living together, if you were whatever in way that person was your partner, you're still a widow because, you know, anyways, so it was very interesting. The month after he died, um, it was the Super Bowl. And my friends invited me, and I just wanted to be around like people that I was close to. And my family, my dad had died the year prior to Fred, and so my family was completely like torn up. Like, people didn't want to come over to my house, um, and they didn't after Fred died. My family didn't come. My brothers, my sister-in-laws, my mom maybe once or twice, but I think it was just so hard for them to come to terms with the fact that Fred wasn't there anymore. And I think my one of my brothers and sister-in-law came to help me because we had to move back into the house that Fred and I had owned together. But in any case, I went to this event with friends, and this gal that Fred and them they used to coach my son's baseball team. And they said to me, "Oh, didn't we go to a party at your house at this address? Da da da." And they named it off, and I go, "No, that's not where we lived." And and so I told them where we lived, and they said, "Oh, well, maybe that was his first wife." And I said, "Well, Fred didn't have a first wife. I was his only wife. I mean, I am his first wife." And she had said a little bit prior to that something like, "Well, yeah, he was kind of," she had said he was kind of an asshole, which he wasn't. He was a really nice guy, but about baseball and about rules, he was very specific, I would say. Um, and so she was just saying this stuff to me, and I'm just like looking at her like, "Who are you, woman? And why would you be saying to me, like a month after he died, you're saying this stuff to me?" And I'm like, "No, I was his only wife." And it was just, she was like, she kind of did the uh-oh look, like, "Oh, I stepped in it." And so those are some of the things that people can say or do, or like, "Oh, oh, you divorced him, so like it must not be bad that he died because we divorced." Well, I loved him dearly. We didn't divorce because I didn't love him. We divorced for other reasons, which, you know, maybe in some ways a lack of my maturity or whatever, a lot of things. We were like really tight, like brother and sister. But anyways, I'm just saying that because people just they think all these different thoughts, and I think sometimes people think that I try to give people grace because everybody's awkward around death. Some people just can't handle talking about it or being around it. So I know now to give them grace about it, but it took a long time to process through that um because people just are uncomfortable. But at the same time, when you lose somebody, you need people. And I'm still processing the fact that my family has not really shown up, nor did Fred's family show up for my kids and be there to be present to kind of fill in some of the gap of this massive person in our lives. The fact that we lost him and that he's not there. So I try to fill in as kind of the mom. I'm the mom, but fill in as the dad. And I know Fred well enough because I had known him for so long to tell my kids like, "Well, your dad would say this and your dad would say that." And then we have our own, because we didn't have anybody on the outside, but maybe my best friend, and my kids had their friends. Um, my kids and I are, my four kids and I are a tribe, and we remember, like we keep the jokes alive and all those things. And we were talking about anniversaries. My daughter had our wedding date tattooed on her leg, and
Wow.
so that was really special. And so just little things like that. Not that I love that she's got tattoos, but but if she has it, that's a great one to have. So it's just yeah, people do say the damnedest things, and I can't imagine um what they say about, like in Angelina's case. I mean, I know
Yeah.
how hurtful that can be.
Yeah, I think that this is a really great topic. and I can see how people might be awkward around death, but I think in my scenario, I really do. I have had to learn how to give people grace, but some of the things that people have said to me, I really think it's not even being awkward around death, but I worry that it's more their curiosity was more important to them.
Mhm.
Ironically enough, working in the mental health space and the wellness space, people within my field had asked me how he did it, the means in which he did it, who found him, who I was seeing for therapy. And I really felt like that was really inappropriate. And the only question they should be asking me is what they could do to support me.
Yeah.
Um, you know,
If you're okay.
if I was okay. And so yeah, and I struggled with that for a really long time. I just really felt like that was really inappropriate. And I think what was difficult about that is the time in which they had asked me those questions. I was so broken and so raw that looking back, being more clear-minded now, I'm still kind of frustrated, with those
Yeah.
questions. Um, but I think with this topic of, like the really mean things that people say, or, maybe they're awkward or whatever it is, I really want to highlight the really great things that people told me, um, that really moved me. And it makes me emotional thinking about it. Is I think with like what you're saying, Kim, I think it's amazing to remember him, to remember the people that we lost. But one person had told me, um, like, gosh, Angelina, like, I can't imagine like what a light you were in his life. And almost reframed, we always focus on the person that we lost, and I think that that's so important, but almost reframed it in a way of how lucky was he to have me in his life and what I did for him and the love that I showed him. And that stuck with me. The way that it made me feel, it really stuck with me, that when people lose people, I try to speak that light into them. My brother lost a friend recently, and I was telling my brother, I'm like, how lucky was he to have you as a friend? You're so loyal, you're so funny. Like, how lucky was he, that he got to know you.
Mhm.
But really speaking to the piece of how awkward it can be, I remember being awkward, like, what do I say? I don't know how to fix the problem, or things like that. But I think because I've experienced grief, now I know what to say and what not to say. That I have an uncle who would text me all the time, just a heart, or I love you. I know you're not okay. Call me if you need me. Thinking about you. It wasn't an extravagant text. It wasn't and even when I didn't go to Thanksgiving, he was like, I know you're not coming. You don't have to come. I really wish you were here. Just know I love you. Call me if you need me. But just checking on people, it doesn't have to be extravagant. You don't have to fix the situation, but just telling people that you love them and not expecting anything, not expecting a text back, not taking it personal if the people that are grieving aren't calling you back or texting you back, I think is just goes such a long way.
Mhm.
Yeah. How about you, Christina?
Well, I don't, I think there have been some comments that were awkward for me to deal with, but I can't remember them right now, except maybe one. I was really surprised. A good friend of mine, I really hadn't talked about a lot about what I was going through or anything like that. But I was with some friends and I brought up in a context that had come up just one short thing. And my friend said, well, that's not something that I can really help you with. You should probably see a counselor about it. And I just like, yes, counseling is very important. And what you guys are saying about everyone who reaches out, who that I can't tell you how much it meant to me when people would just reach out and just in any way. I mean, it just because you've had such a loss. So to have
Mhm.
other people step in, it really means so much.
Yeah.
If I could add to, um, I think this also goes into people being so awkward about it. A couple people would point out the silver linings, and I don't know for you
Yeah.
guys, it's, well, at least they're not struggling anymore. And it's like, I would still much rather them still be here or it be different. And I'd rather people not point out the silver linings.
Yeah.
And I think it's just one of those things where you just show up for the people you let us spend. And same thing with you, Christina. It's uh kind of like, when they say you should go to a counselor, okay, then it's making me feel like there's something wrong. Even though it might be great advice to talk to a counselor, it's making me feel like there's something wrong in that moment. And then I think there's one line, I definitely think I developed anxiety after this whole situation. I think it's natural for people to hug you and say, I can't even imagine what you're going through. And I'm sure they can't. But when people would tell me that, I would start to freak out. Like, you're confirming that, yes, what I'm going through is a lot right now. And so I think there's so many things that people say that produces anxiety, confirms that what we're going through is a lot, that I think just showing up. And I think the biggest thing is like, what can I do to support you? Let me know, if you need anything. I think one of my favorite things to do for people when they're grieving is sending gift cards for food, or dropping off groceries, or just any little thing to take off like the daily tasks, of being able to help in any way that you can, of taking off of the tasks that they have to do.
For sure.
Yeah. Can I add really quick, Barbara? Sorry. One little thing. My friends, like I had Bunko friends, and there's like 12 people usually in Bunko. And these are all people that I'd known forever and ever. And my next door neighbor, Cindy, and like all of the gals. And also people from some of the organizations like musical theater that my girls were involved with. For the funeral, they took over everything. It was amazing. Like they just said, what can we do? And I said, like, I can't even think about the food or how to do it or whatever. And they just said, we've got you. We've got you. And those ladies like saved my life.
For sure.
So when you have those people that really step up and do that, that is just the best thing to just like to the best thing to say is, what can I do for you? And if you can't think of anything, when you think of something, just let me know. That's the best thing. And then the other thing I was going to say is my mom, bless her heart, I love her to death, but 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 she would do the blowing sunshine. I said, my mom would be like, well, like you just need to like move on, and you need to this and you need to that. And it's like if I'm feeling sad, like, oh, but just, be so grateful for the time and so grateful for this and so grateful for that. And and finally I got like, honestly, I became a little bitter and rude. And I would say, quit blowing sunshine up my, what? Like, please, it's okay if I'm sad. And yes, 10 years later, 11 years later, it's okay that I still miss him and that I miss him in our lives. It's okay. It's okay for me to be sad today. And then I'll be fine. And yes, I'm grateful. I've got 4 beautiful children with him, and they remind me of him, and they're funny and all those things, but it's okay if I'm sad. Like, I don't have to be okay for you to feel okay that I'm okay.
Yeah. I
Great
think
name of a book right there.
the most the most helpful thing that someone said to me was, she had sustained unbelievable losses over her life and knew more about grief than God. And so she just said, just keep breathing. It's enough for today. And I thought, oh, no, that I can do. I can breathe. I can't do anything else. My sister-in-law gloriously planned the entire memorial, and I just floated along in this horrible fog. And so the day before the memorial, I saw something on Facebook, things you should never say to someone who has just lost a loved one. And I'm like, oh. So I posted that on my Facebook page, and people came to the memorial and said, oh, thank you for putting that on your Facebook page. I would have said one of those things to you. Those are things I have said to people. I feel like I should apologize to people. So what I thought was kind of harsh and snarky, people said that was so helpful. And my friend said, well, we should have made photocopies and passed this out at the door. I'm like, that's a little even. So, okay. So as we have talked and shared, and I'd like you all to sort of summarize like a 1-minute takeaway for people. If nobody watched any of this video, except they carried this one thing out of here, What is the
Mm.
one thing you want grieving people to know? And each of you, your situations are unique. And so each of you comes from this, well, everyone's unique, but you all come from such interesting different directions. So what is the one thing you would want people to carry out of here? Christina?
When someone has gone through a huge loss, they should expect, and other people should expect, that they're not going to be functioning at top capacity. If their brain is not going to be working quite right, the grieving process is going to be ongoing and random, and the moments of grief will hit out of the blue. So the best thing that you can do to help them is just to let them know you're there, and that you are with them, and not try to fix it, but just let them know that you care.
Great, thank you. So Kim, what is your 1 minute takeaway?
I would say that the stages of grief are a suggestion. Because they are all over the place. The timeline is not necessarily linear. It doesn't have a length of time. It can be long or short. That it is all okay, the way that you're grieving. But to definitely connect with people. Connection with people is super important. So connect with people that understand, because that will save you. And I the biggest lesson I've learned through it all is I can't do it myself. That was the lesson I learned that day when my friend stepped in with helping me with the food, that I cannot do it myself, and that it is okay to not do it yourself and ask for help. That is super important. And that it just takes time, and that there isn't an end. I think that grief turns into a way of honoring that person differently, and having more empathy and compassion for people in this world. But it just turns into more of a way to acknowledge, I don't know, it's hard for me to put into words exactly, but I love Fred even more, and I honor honor him even more, and keep him alive in lots of ways, for my kids especially, but even for me, on a regular basis. So I think those things are, I think I was going to say that too, that having people speak his name is so healing for me.
Absolutely. So Angelina, what would you like us to carry out of here?
I would say that in my grief journey, it wasn't until two things in my grief journey. It wasn't until um, I gave it to God that I started making headway in my grief. But aside from that, the first tangible thing I think I did that helped was I had to prioritize my peace. People that were
Mm.
not serving me, people who were taking things personally, I had to cut them off. I mentioned earlier in this talk that I could not attend Thanksgiving dinner. It was stressing me out, thinking about having to show up and listen to everybody was thankful for, and having to say what I was thankful for. And when I was like, I don't have to go. I don't have to go. I immediately felt a sense of relief. That was like a pivotal moment in my grief journey. So I really encourage those who are grieving the loss of a loved one, to really just prioritize, yeah, protecting your peace. But I would say from this meeting specifically, the biggest takeaway, and I think one of the most important things that we can do as grieving partners, is connecting with other grieving partners. Something I think so special from this takeaway specifically is Barbara had asked each of us to, what is something you guys all want to talk about? Each and every single one of us put in the chat something completely different that we wanted to talk about. Yet every single one of us was like, yeah, we all had something to contribute to Fog Brain. Yes, let's talk about the anniversaries. Yes, let's talk about, and we all could contribute. I think that there is something very powerful that in the way that we were all able to validate that we all experience the same things. And I think that there is healing in that. And so I really just encourage anybody who's grieving the loss of a loved one to find a support group. I know that there are support groups for people who have lost loved ones to cancer. I know that I'm in a support group for people who have lost loved ones to suicide. Barbara, I think you do provide a lot of grief work, but just connecting with people who have lost a partner is, I think, another way to get that healing process started.
Yeah.
I totally agree with that. That would be my takeaway, is that you absolutely have to bring people into the journey with you, whether you were raised like me. Okay, it's been an hour, you should be fine. I need people to invite me into my grief, or at least acknowledge it, because it's happening even if I'm not there. And people to give me permission to be a human being and to grieve and to have feelings and be devastated and all that stuff. And on the other end, people who feel as if they're never, ever going to get over the grief, hearing people that are farther along who, like Kim said, it never goes away, but it takes on a different shape. And it becomes more of something that creates stirring, their strength sort of gets incorporated into you. And so just hearing people at various stages with various experiences who just invite you into whatever it is that's happening for you, whatever version of grief you're doing is the perfect version for you. And being around other grievers really helps you just step into what you're actually experiencing. So that would be it for me. Okay, well, I want to thank you all again. It's been so wonderful. I keep using the word honored, but every time I get a bunch of you together and listen to you share your story and take these risks, I feel honored again. And so I know that you're all taking care of yourselves in your different ways. And thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Barbara.
Barbara.
Thank
Nice to
you.
meet you, Christina.
Nice to meet you both.
Hey, Angelina.